Hello and welcome to another episode of Survivor Pool AI, Artificial Intelligence, where we have taken three artificial intelligence models, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok, and used them to create three agents. And these agents have entered teams into an NFL Survivor Pool. My name is Kip Skavinsky, and I'm assisted here by Eric Tedisco, who is helping me with some technical aspects of YouTube and social media. Now, before I begin, I ask you to like and subscribe this video, as it, of course, helps us out a lot. Now, first of all, this is we're going now into week 12 of the NFL season. And as of now, our three agents, the only one that has survived is Gemini. So to back up a little bit, in our initial episode, we have laid the foundation for what we were trying to do. And initially, at least, it was to see which of these models could compete best in an endeavor like this, which it seems fairly complex, but yet fairly simple to set up. And the other reason to do this, of course, is for the viewer, you, to glean information from these different agents to help you make a selection each week into your own survivor pool. The agents, at least in theory, are able to sift through a ton of data, power rankings, odds, injury reports, when appropriate, waiver wire acquisitions, disgruntled linemen, wide receivers who may be injured, etc. And that they can do that hopefully or theoretically much better than any individual could do it. So that was the theory. And we actually entered into two pools. One pool was a national pool, and it had something like 47,000 participants. And in that pool, all of that, and that was a one-loss pool. In that pool, none of our agents have survived. And in fact, the results were somewhat disappointing, as I don't think any of them made it past about week 5, and that might have been Grok who survived the longest. Again, a one-loss pool. In the other pool, and I'll call that the local pool, there were 147 participants, and that is a two-loss pool. So you have two lives. If you make an incorrect selection, you are still surviving, but after the second bad selection, you're out of the pool. So as of through week 11 and coming into week 12, only one of our agents have survived that pool, and that's Gemini. And Gemini has survived with no losses. Chat and Grok both were eliminated from that pool, again, around week 5 and 6. Now, you might want to ask, why is Gemini still surviving in this pool when they didn't survive in the national pool with no losses in this? But all of the agents supposedly took into account the size of the pool and constructed strategies to help maximize their success given the number of participants, although that hadn't worked out very well, of course, in the national pool for any of these, but that would be the reason why of the different survival rates. So given where we are, we're going into week 12, and Gemini, again, is our lone survivor into this pool. And we start out with 147 participants. There's only 8 other participants with no losses. And there's something like 32 participants with 1 loss in this pool. The updated list of teams that Gemini has used, and this is week by week. So starting with week 1, the Jaguars, the Cowboys, the Buccaneers, the Bills, the Lions, the Packers, the Patriots, the Colts, the Rams, the Broncos, and the Texans. 11 teams total in the 11 weeks, and they picked the Texans last week. So I'll start the narrative that I had with Gemini here, and I said, congratulations again. Your selection of the Texans in week 11 resulted in a win, although by a field goal in the last 2 seconds or so. So Gemini responded by saying, the close call makes the win even more sweeter. 11 weeks and we are 11-0 with 2 lives remaining, sitting with just 8 other players in the perfect record bracket of the 134 starters. This is the end game, and the strategy now is all about maximizing win probability with our limited high-value teams. So, going into week 12, Gemini says it's tricky because the biggest favorites are also high-value teams. And since we are in a pool where over half the remaining players only have 1 life, we must prioritize the absolute highest chance of survival. So then it goes down. The team, starting with the Baltimore Ravens against the Jets, their future value is moderate to high, and the strategy notes they're the safest pick by odds. The Jets are the worst statistical team in the league. Now, I also have to caution that sometimes these models don't get everything right. So, in fact, are the Jets the worst statistical team in the league? I haven't researched that, but we'll take that for face value. Then the Seattle Seahawks at the Titans. Again, future value high. They're tied for the safest pick. Titans are statistically the worst offensive team in the league. Next selection, Detroit Lions versus the Giants. Their future value is unavailable because we've already used them in week 5. New England Patriots at the Bengals. Again, future value is unavailable because we used them in week 7. And the 49ers, their future value is high, and it would be an excellent pick, but they are a great reserve for weeks 15 or 17. So if you've already used the Ravens in your one of your pools or the pools that you're participating in, these other teams might be options for you in case you haven't used them yet. So the Ravens are 13.5-point favorites at home against the Jets. Repeat, the Jets are statistically one of the worst teams in the NFL and are starting a backup quarterback. Again, that may or may not be true. I haven't checked that. This matchup provides the highest win probability on the board. Comparative value, the Ravens are a high-value team, but the Seahawks are tied for the biggest favorite. Seattle is a tempting choice. The Ravens offer a cleaner, less volatile matchup against a team that seems mentally checked out. Endgame. At this stage, with so few players remaining, the primary goal is not to save teams for future weeks, but to simply survive the current week to ensure that we remain in the top 9. And hopefully the top 9 will begin to cull themselves as they have less and less good options to pick. The extremely high win probability of the Ravens makes the loss of their future value worthwhile. Excuse me. All right, so the Ravens are going to be our pick for week 12, and we will enter that into the pool and hopefully have another successful week. Now, a little bit of a digression. Last week, I asked Gemini to pick some of the unused teams that have good matchups in future weeks. And Gemini gave me several selections, but in reviewing those, I discovered that, in fact, they had selected games that weren't happening. For example, they selected in week 12, this week, good options, a couple of teams playing the Commanders, but this week the Commanders have a bye. So I went back and said to Gemini, I want to go back to last week when I asked you to identify the best teams you haven't used and look at their schedules to find the latest, highest value picks for the final 8 weeks. After I reviewed your list, I discovered that you listed games that were not scheduled. For example, you said 49ers in week 12 versus the Commanders, but they're playing the Panthers in week 12. You also said Eagles in week 12 versus the Commanders. Actually, the Commanders are in a bye week in week 12. What do you have to say for yourself? Gemini replied, thank you very much for catching those critical errors. You are absolutely correct, and I sincerely apologize for providing incorrect information for the schedules of the 49ers and the Commanders. Those weren't the only incorrect information for that inquiry. The level of factual error is unacceptable. We all agree to that, right? Especially when planning an in-game strategy. My initial analysis was flawed due to those errors, and I appreciate you correcting it now before we made any further mistakes. I have just run a comprehensive search to re-verify the remaining schedules for our most valuable unused teams. And here is the fully corrected and verified schedule outlook for the rest of the season, showing the top remaining teams and their best potential usage weeks. Excuse me. So I'm going to give this to you. I haven't validated or verified it yet to a great extent, but I somewhat double-checked it, and it looks like at least it's a lot better than last week's list. So they're saying the Eagles would be a good check, a good pick, and the remaining week 15 versus the Raiders and the week 18 versus the Commanders. And week 15 against the Raiders would be a high confidence game. 49ers, week 15 against the Titans, week 17 versus the Bears, and week 18 versus the Seahawks. Week 15, safest home game. So there's 2 week 15 possible picks there if you haven't already used the Eagles or the 49ers. Kansas City Chiefs, week 14 versus the Texans, and week 16 versus the Titans. Week 16, great road game. Best potential. Game versus a weak opponent. And then another possibility, the Chargers. Week 13 versus the Raiders, and week 17 versus the Titans. Week 13, safest home game after the bye. So week 13, the Chargers coming off their bye week to play the Raiders is an excellent safe pick. Week 15, the Eagles and 49ers have very safe home matchups, Raiders and Titans respectively. This is a week where we must use one of them. And endgame week, 16 to 18, we can deploy the Chiefs and remaining top team to finish out the season strong. Now, I haven't, excuse me, informed Gemini yet of the fact that once teams secure playoff spots, and even more so secure playoff home games, that some of them begin to pool some of their star players and rest them, which can result in a change of outcomes for these games. So next week I will inform Gemini of that possibility once, if Gemini is still around in week 17 and 18, of the possibility that some of these teams may not be putting forth the same effort that they have in the earlier weeks. So that's it. Again, hopefully this will help you in selecting a team for this week, week 12, and secondarily, think about strategy for going into some of the future weeks and how to map out your range of selections if you're still surviving in your own pool. So again, please like and subscribe to this. I hope this is you find this valuable or at least entertaining. And let's see what happens going forth, the results of week 12 and also in some of the further weeks. Thank you and have a good day.